go to parents involved in education. And a few weeks back, a couple of times, a couple of different meetings, I was criticized by this lovely lady over here who's taking my picture. I believe she is a union representative. And my organization was criticized.
That's enough. Let her have her time. Go ahead.
My organization was criticized as well by name, which is USPI, U.S. Parents Involved in Education. And the subject of her criticism was that we have a goal to close the national department, the Federal Department of Education, USED. And we believe that this is a good idea because it returns control to the states as per the U.S. Constitution. Education was never meant to be a federal responsibility. I sent a copy of our blueprint to close the Federal Department of Education to all of the school board members by email. The blueprint shows how the department could be closed by taking its functions and putting them into other departments or sending them back to the states, such as the school lunch program would go back into the agriculture department where it came from. So it's just a matter of being more constitutional and bringing the control to the states and not the federal level. On a different subject, there was a Rapid City Journal article, a propaganda piece, a big banner headline above the fold on Saturday. 4 education experts have determined exactly what's wrong with our school district, and it seems to be that it's all the critics that are the problem. The teacher shortage and the labor shortage is widespread, and this cannot be the fault of the local school board. Look at all the signs as you go down the street. Help wanted, now hiring, bonuses. This is widespread. It is not unique to this school district at this time. Anyone attempting to apply critical thinking to the system is accused of being against teachers or a hater, or against public education in general, or of politicizing the process. Well, Marxism and wokeism is politics. And those of you who practice it know full well so that propagandists such as the Rapid City Journal should stop lying to the people, telling them there's nothing to see here, everything is just fine, except for those pesky critics. And I believe the Journal is doing the community a disservice by stirring up dissension and division in the community just to boost their sagging circulation figures. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, I'm sorry, I can't read your last name, Peggy. Can you give me your last name?
Yes, my name is President Thomas and board members. My name is Peggy Bias, and I teach special education students at Stevens High School. I do not know to whom I should address this concern, so I am here, and I hope that you will take appropriate action. Your special education department is in trouble. District-wide, we are in trouble. I would like to speak specifically to our shortage of paraprofessionals. This is not the first time you've been made aware of this. Of the approximately 120 paraprofessional positions in the district, about half are unfilled. This staffing emergency predates the current shortage of workers. HR is currently in the process of reposting positions that have remained open for the 21-22 school year, so while this information is accurate, our website does not reflect it. Because of this shortage, we are unable to meet student needs appropriately. No one can realistically state otherwise. As a special education teacher with 32 years of experience, I think I could be considered an expert in the field. I want to be very clear. Under current circumstances, we are not able to meet student needs. Without adequate staff, appropriate support cannot be provided in general education classes. Students cannot be educated in the least restrictive environment. This is a violation of federal law. Without adequate staff, students who require additional supervision for their safety and the safety of others may slip through the cracks. Unfortunately, this is a very real possibility despite everybody's best efforts. Without adequate staff, we struggle to meet the needs of students who require additional support. Imagine for a moment trying to push 2 wheelchairs down the hall at the same time. Imagine trying to get students to and from buses or out of the building in an emergency. Imagine trying to complete a 3-person lift with just 2 people. Now imagine what that's going to do to your workman's comp claims. We need more people. I do not know how to fully achieve this goal, but based on feedback from exiting employees, it starts with pay. With a starting salary of $13.36 per hour, these frontline workers are currently the lowest paid of all classified full-time staff. State law requires paraprofessionals have 2 years of college experience or pass a praxis test. With the exception of a few positions such as plumbers and electricians, no other classified position has this prerequisite for employment. And yet, paraprofessionals have the lowest starting salary. As you know, it takes very little effort to find other employment or a job that pays more than the district is currently offering. I am well aware that the district is currently having financial difficulties, but this situation needs to change. In a conversation with a departing paraprofessional, she said, "This is a hard job, and without enough staff, it is too hard." This is truly a crisis, and your remaining staff people are buckling under the pressure. Stress levels are high. People continue to leave. You may not be aware that Stevens recently lost a staff member who had been his district employee for 21 years. Job-related stress was a major contributing factor. Her loss was and will be continued to be felt for a long time. This emergency is only going to get worse unless something is done, and we need your help. You have my contact information if you have any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Haywood Robinson.
Hello, hello. Oh, there we go. Look at that. All right, kind of frantically scrambling a little bit together here, but it's kind of easy because it's almost like I'm an echo. I'm talking again about building salaries, and then I'm going to continue on with a little bit of please stop the hate, please. I'd like to thank the district for my $500 one-time payment for my master's degree. This will literally take over half a century to pay off at this rate, right? I'd just like you to process that and think about that kind of impact and what that says to teachers that are coming into the district or trying to stay in the district. That's quite a way to insult someone quietly. But I have friends working in the district that are even worse off. They're in the lowest step still after 5 years, and they're about to have to renew their certificate, having to pay $350. But I'm sure they're going to thank you for that tank of gas that you gave them that's going to kind of equivalent, kind of balance out somehow. I don't see how you're going to meet the demands. North Middle School has 5 open English positions now. How can you even create a schedule to teach those kids to read? The community often touts that teaching is a labor of love, and which it is, and I do, but we can't build schools, buy books, or pay our bills with love alone. We need you, our school council, to take this message to your constituents. I need to see that from you. Please start doing that. And find a fiscal solution, like now, instead of creating a space for hate and dismissal. So I'd like to talk about 2 items on the agenda today, just to mull over your mind while you're thinking about it in public display. The cultural and religious symbols on public display, as well as the invocation. The invocation has been used as a weapon against people of this community already now. It's unequivocal. You absolutely know it because you saw people cry in this own room about their own kids. That is unacceptable. And if any discussion doesn't include the denial or the removal of the invocation, then that's not really a discussion of what is probable. I have students that have died because of this type of hate. There are people in this room That's how important it is, okay? It is unacceptable to kind of allow a podium a preference for that and not to do your jobs, please, and say, please stop, that's not appropriate for this discussion. It's violent and it's angering, it's like harmful to actual people in the room. Okay, so that's about it for that. And then finally on the symbolism and cultural items, I get kind of frustrated with this because I see it as a veiled attempt just to remove pride flags. And I don't think that it would fly if you just said that, but equal accommodation is absolutely essential in a school without question. I teach debate. Disagreement is absolutely important for debate. And oftentimes the national standards are politically charged. Am I supposed to just say Jack and Jill went up a hill, discuss, did they or not? I absolutely cannot. If I'm trying to teach myth and symbol, am I supposed to say, sorry, I got to get rid of these books. They talk about Odin, right? No, I don't think you're going to try and do that. If a teacher is wearing a cross on their neck, is someone going to go up and say, hey, can you please remove that cross off your neck? Or on their wedding ring? Are you going to say, like, that's not an appropriate show of care? I don't think so. So equal accommodation is absolutely important. Are you going to tell me not to teach about MLK? Are you going to and his dream? Are you going to tell me not to talk about the Odyssey?
That's time. Thank you.
So please think about equal accommodation.
Next
Thank you for
speaker
your
is
time.
Donna Robinson.
Hi, I'm here tonight in response to the June 6th meeting invocation. Pastor Rasmussen's invocation was wrong, mean-spirited, and inappropriate on so many levels. But I am not here to debate or dispute his beliefs. I believe this is not the time or place for theological discussions. And I do mean that on many levels. I am here to express my shock, anger, and deep disappointment at the school board for allowing and encouraging his appearance. Someone in authority invited him to be here. You invited him earlier, January 18th, and last meeting. While his rhetoric contained some of the themes, as in January, God in the schools, Satan hard at work, etc., you had a clear idea of his point of view. You are here to guide the educational process. You are here to oversee and protect our students and parents. Since you seem to be so comfortable to stand in judgment and disapproval and take action in what students see, read, what teachers can teach, and even discuss, I can assume, therefore, that you agree with the judgment of Pastor R. Now, maybe you didn't preview his invocation. Maybe you were thinking of something else as he spoke, as I understand some people do during sermons. But you couldn't have helped but hear, couldn't have helped but sense the energy in the room, couldn't have helped but hear the religious approval of amens during the presentation. You couldn't have avoided hearing his pointed, targeting, and scornful references to gay and trans students. I heard and saw the shaken and stunned parents' reaction to his thinly veiled judgment of their children. And I heard nothing of your contradiction, nothing of your concern as how the speech felt like an attack. You are complicit by your silence. You are complicit by not offering an apology to those offended, a public apology as the speech was public. You are complicit in allowing his bullying innuendos. My conclusion is that you agree with the pastor and are totally derelict in not defending or supporting some of the most vulnerable in the school system. You are supposed to lead. Well, I, as a mere citizen, will stand up to your bullying. I will condemn such speech and offer my support to those who felt hurt. I will also add, please, A, consider not having an invocation. B, if you want to consider, if you have an invocation, hold it before the official meeting. so other attendees are not held hostage to hear it. Or C, last but not least, have an invocation led by a diverse community of spiritual beliefs.
Thank you. Next speaker is Michael Berkland.
I have some items for the board. Can I just give those to Shirley to pass out? Should I bring them to you? Right, before I get started on what I was going to talk about tonight, I just want to address one thing Ms. Florence talked about. I believe that saying that everyone is hiring is a bit of a cop-out. Every school district is hiring, that is true, but not every school district has 500 openings. So there is something going on here that we do need to address. So what I came to speak about tonight was there are 4 items on tonight's agenda that I do have concerns about, not necessarily because I believe that any one of them is particularly bad policy, but rather the intent and motivations as to why they have appeared on the agenda in the first place. So the first item is 9Q, surplus property. There are items listed as 13 boxes of surplus curriculum. I understand that the board does not put these lists together, and in general, these vague descriptions would probably be fine, but given recent discussions, I believe a bit more specificity could put the community's mind at ease there about whether those are the books or not. The next item is item 9T, the resolution to establish a parental guide. Once again, I think this is a great way to make the parents and guardians of our district more aware of the opportunities that exist for them to be involved in their students' education. My only concern here is the timeline. The beginning of the school year will already be a very busy time for our principals, so I would ask you to move that completion date back a bit to provide more time, unless perhaps you have already had these conversations with the principals and they're on board. I just don't want to put another thing on them with a hard deadline before the school year. The next item is 10A, the invocation policy. Once again, if we are to have an invocation, I believe that the policy itself is fine, especially after the hate-filled rhetoric of last meeting's invocation. I find it is incredibly important to have guidelines surrounding the contents of the invocation. On a similar note, however, I encourage the board to consider the reasons why the invocation exists in the first place. I have clearly heard that it makes a large amount of our community uncomfortable, so what are the benefits we are seeing to offset this discomfort? Is the choice providing a benefit for our students, as is the main goal of the school board, or is it just something to make all of us feel better? A moment of personal reflection may be something that's more appropriate. And lastly, I would like to speak about item 10B, classroom displays and decorations. Once again, the policy itself is relatively non-offensive. I noticed that it is identical to the one that the Lee Deadwood schools recently voted on. They did, however, make amendments to the policy, which is what I gave to all of you. I encourage you to make similar changes, such as allowing exceptions for counselors and considerations for the reasons for removal. For example, it said something about a reasonable person finding it offensive. On a similar note, the Lee Deadwood policy was first created in response to this poster right here, and I can only assume that you are worried about the same. Therefore, I would like to take a moment to share a statistic that is constantly on my mind. 90% of LGBTQ youth are diagnosed with anxiety or depression. 90%. Signs like these encourage children to come to school. Signs like these help students feel respected so that they can learn. Signs like these keep kids alive. I have also had students who have expressed suicidal thoughts to me because they did not feel like they could be who they are. Students must feel emotionally stable to learn at their best. Telling them that they are respected is not a political stance. Stating a respect for one group is not a statement of disrespect for another. All are welcome in Rapid City area schools. To summarize and conclude, I encourage the board to look at the implications and motivations behind each of your policies, whether intended or perceived. Ask yourselves, what is this doing to promote student learning? Make that clear to our community, and if you cannot, then the policy should be revised or denied. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you. Next speaker is Mark Urban.
Good evening, board and fellow community members. My name is Mark Urban. I am a servant, citizen, father, and husband. Beyond that, my credentials are irrelevant. I attended my first board meeting 2 weeks ago. Some of you might be able to guess why. It was perhaps worse than I'd feared, an opening invocation that we've referenced that was dogmatic and full of hate. Community members cherry-picked historical quotes to reinforce narrow perspectives and overused the word indoctrination by people who were blissfully unaware of their own hypocrisy in using that word. On the proposed agenda for tonight, you have line F, which states, and I know it's been revised, but I think the tone's probably still there. The proceedings, referencing the invocation, are designed to be a positive reflection of the board's commitment to students. My question is, to which students? The recent invocation that I witnessed clearly isn't for all students, as it directly attacked LGBTQ and trans students. Is this the new vetting process for spiritual leaders? Are you open to Buddhist, Muslim, agnostic, native, or atheist invocations? Or is this just a guise for state-sanctioned churches? I wasn't going to reference my credentials, but I am a counselor of 16 years. And like some of the people here that are passionate about the people that they help, it's not uncommon for me to have suicidal LGBTQ people in my office. And it's a great tragedy that we need safe spaces, but we do need them for our students. You know, Christians often feel persecuted by people, and we have safe spaces and places for them. We allow them to occupy our spaces. We have a space and we have invocations for them. All these people are asking for is just to be heard and witnessed and protected. That's not too much to ask for an education space. I want my children to be able to think. This is what I want them from our schools. That means that they learn science, reading, mathematics, and history. I'm not a big fan of critical race theory, as it is a falsehood to claim that all American history is racist. But I'm not for the star-spangled awesome curriculum that negates the existence of slavery, the Trail of Tears, Japanese internment. Do I need to go on? I love my country, to be clear, but I am aware of its sins and its triumphs. I would like spirituality is something that we encourage with our children. However, I've not witnessed any spirituality or humility in this with religion in this community. There's a reason why there's a separation of church and state deeply embedded in our nation's DNA. Dogma quickly becomes a way to bully and punish those who stray any distance from the identified path. With recent election results, I really hope that this is a wake-up call to this community. I like the middle. I'm not a big fan of the far left or the far right, which occupies this community. What is needed is far less fear politicking and a return to prudent, thoughtful policy making. Like what was referenced, we have 300 vacancies in this school district, and that is on you. Take accountability for it. We've done something to this district, and it's a toxic environment.
Thank you, that's time.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Jamie Clapham.
Good evening, board and community members. As most of you know, I'm Jamie Clapham, the elected school board representative to fill the seat of Mrs. Poliski in Area 6. Though I am not officially on the other side of the desk, I believe it is already my duty to fulfill my commitment to the community to represent and speak for them. Today, I will do that as it relates to the proposed invocation policy, and I will say shortening it I think was prudent. I reached out to multiple stakeholders, including parents, students, and RCS employees, and this is some of the feedback I received. From a Stephen student, I think that the school is no place for religious input, especially when higher-ups like the school board are encouraging a specific belief. I think that opening with a Christian prayer is openly offensive to any that don't believe in God or hold different religious beliefs. I think that opening with a clearly Christian prayer shows that they are not working to create an inclusive or diverse community. A parent of 3 RCA students, I personally feel like we need to bring more of the Christianity back into the school. Morally, I think kids and adults need it. However, I think we need to be uniform So if staff or leadership-led prayer is not allowed in school, then it shouldn't be allowed at any official school events, including board meetings. Parent and RCS employee said, I am a Christian, but how the board has done this year I feel is a violation of church and state. I would be okay with them if more religions than just Christianity were represented. Parent of RCAS students. It is isolating for those who don't practice the religion represented. One flagrantly offending fact is that the invocation is only done at meetings students and the public can attend in person. It is not part of the special sessions or other board meetings. The inconsistency of the inclusion of the invocation seems disingenuous since it's only done when an audience is physically present. I will be honest and candid in opening stating that I am a woman of deep Christian faith myself. I wholeheartedly support freedom of religion and adhere to the idea that we must protect that freedom for all of our staff and students. However, the invocations that have been presented at the board meetings over the past year do not support that. In fact, the invocations at times, that have been referenced, have been very divisive and at times hurtful and derogatory to some of our RCS community members. Our district is struggling and hurting. We have hundreds of staff openings, no search committee yet for the superintendent, and an elementary school building that may not even be inhabitable at some point next school year. We now have board meetings with the need for security due to the sensitive topics discussed and political divisions in our community related to that. We need unity and healing. Presenting invocations that lift up and support only certain groups of people and make others feel uncomfortable or excluded is exactly the opposite of what we need right now. The invocations have only been on the agenda the last year. I looked at school board agendas in over 20 districts across South Dakota and Colorado, and not a single one besides ours includes invocations. They are not a standard practice. They are not necessary. They are not facilitating or promoting a positive atmosphere to the board meetings. Taking time to write, edit, present, represent this policy is taking time from critical issues that the board could be addressing, like our failing buildings or our overwhelmed staff shortages. I'm acutely aware of the major responsibilities and the trust that are placed on the school board. I understand and embrace the idea of setting the tone for meetings to be positive and encouraging and collaborative. In that spirit, I would urge the board to consider a moment of inspiration instead of invocations. I will leave you with an example of such a reading. Attitude by Charles Swindoll. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think, say, or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It can make or break a company, a church, a home.
That's time. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Sarah Gross.
Oh my goodness, it's a beautiful day outside, but I won't keep it short, I promise. First, I want to say thank you to Nicole Schweigert and Mike Talley for stepping up. Both of you have been members of our school community for a long time, and the institutional knowledge that you possess, I'm grateful that it's there, and I'm grateful that you can carry the ship forward this year because, as I've spoken about before, instability is what I believe some of my colleagues have left because of, what students have left because of, and so I'm grateful that you can provide us stability this year. You probably have noticed that I am live streaming it because we don't have a media person. Katie left, Caitlin has resigned, and so I don't believe that we have a media person, and people are curious on what's going on. And then I really wasn't going to come today. My little boy has a t-ball game, and the books were ruminating in my brain, like what's happening with those books? Where did they go? What's the status? I haven't heard. It's just something that's left undone. And so I am curious about that. If you could report out, that would be fabulous. I know that there was offers to buy them, and I don't know where those are at, but I think that would be good. And then I was still going to bypass the meeting, but then I remembered the science curriculum. I was scrolling through additional pay, and there was math adoption information. And so I know that my colleagues went to meeting after well-run meeting, and they narrowed it down. I know that our tech support people have been testing our new Active Inspire boards. Shane, I know that your department, in order to buy curriculum today, you can't just open a book and look at it. You have to make sure that it works with a projecting device. You have to make sure it works with the student laptop. Oh wait, and then there's the iPads and a different brand of student laptop, and what if these kids bring their own? So it's a huge task, and I do not believe that you are saving my colleagues any stress. I don't teach the science curriculum in elementary, but I do watch it, and there is no stress saved by delaying that. It feels incredibly political, and I just don't understand why you would need more time. After I watched people come into my building when my third grade teacher, they taught a lesson out of it. And so I don't mean to get into a personal debate here on the floor, but I think that as board members, you have to do your homework. You have to be informed. You have to go to special trainings on your own to get more informed if you're not informed. And I think listening to Florence Thompson is not a place where we get information. I have a South Dakota Association of School Psychologists, a press release that I'm going to bring up and put into the public record, just like she wanted to be on the mic, because the voice that we hear, the South Dakota Association of School Psychologists, strongly denounces the views of the South Dakota parents involved in education and their president, Florence Thompson, regarding preschool and the sexual orientation or gender identity of children. These views in no way reflect the training and professional standards of school psychologists, nor the views of ADASP. They go on to say that they are working for kids. Statements claiming that individuals can be recruited to their sexual orientation or gender identity are both patently wrong and dangerous. And so the voices we hear, I'm so grateful that in a public setting, that all of this is to view by everyone, that we can look through the financials. That's what's wonderful about public schools. But I do feel like our agenda has taken these side roads due to some members of our public that are not serving our students. The curriculum adoption serves our students. That is
That's
something
time,
that needs
Sarah.
to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. And last speaker, Kyle Kraus.
I'm going to start with a Bible verse. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. It's from Matthew chapter 6. At the last board meeting, the invocation was used to denigrate some of our most vulnerable students and to spew hatred. That should never be allowed to happen. Walter Rasmussen, who gave that invocation, should never be invited back. Hopefully you never do so. By giving him the opportunity to speak again, I believe this board would basically be endorsing his message. If you're a person of faith, you should pray before these meetings. I encourage you, ask God for wisdom and guidance as you fulfill your duties. But do so as Jesus directed, privately and personally. We don't need the public show that the invocation has become. If the board does insist on keeping the invocation, keep it short and sweet. It takes 30 seconds to give thanks to God and ask for his wisdom and guidance. Anything over a minute in time limit is just an invitation for a repeat of what happened last time. I'd also like to address the displays policy. I don't think it should be lost on anyone that at the same time the board is proposing a policy to prohibit divisive religious displays by our teachers. They're also proposing an invocation policy for these board meetings. It's just some irony there that I think we should all recognize. Just being straightforward, what it looks like what was proposed here is a carbon copy of what was proposed in the Lead Deadwood district. I note that that district made some very important amendments to that policy that are not contained within what's on the agenda today. Most important of those, I think, is the amendment that ensured that school counselors, some of whom you've heard from today, are able to display such safe space signage in their own offices. I'd strongly encourage you to adopt a similar amendment. I'd make it even a little broader, not just in their offices, but at the entrances to their offices. It'd be truly unfortunate if this board were to really, I'd say, seek to target our most vulnerable students in a way that they can't be informed that going to their school counselors is safe for them to do. I don't know what prompted that to get on the agenda. I do think there is some value in having a policy related to somewhat controversial speech, but I strongly encourage you to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. If the purpose is to target certain members of our student population, our most vulnerable members, then rethink your objectives. I just hadn't planned to speak on this, but I'd also mentioned the science curriculum.
That's time. Thank you.
All right.
All right, at this time, we are moving on to number 6. We don't have any sharing the success for tonight. And then the conflict of interest, we have no waivers that have been turned in. We do, however, have number 8, a special report from the Hayes Benefit Plan. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. Thank you for having me. A couple months ago, I was standing here giving you an overview of our initial look at what the renewal for your benefits were going to be come September 1st, and I've been asked to come today to give you an update on that progress and where we've landed and where the recommendations would be. So let's see if I make sure this works. Okay, so real quick, just like we do always, I'm going to give you a quick update on how your plans are running, how your medical plans are running. When I was here last time, it was through February, so we have a couple months of extra data. And what that extra couple months of data has shown is we are seeing a favorable trend in your utilization and claims. So when I was out here last time, we saw your paid claims to Wellmark's contractual expected claims at about 115%. That has now come down to 110%. So we are seeing what we call that hyperutilization, which we are seeing in many industries today because of the pandemic, start to come down. So through April, again, we are seeing 110.9% of expected claims, again, down from 115. When we look at it on more of a month-by-month basis, when we know that the trend, so the cost of goods and services today, what they're going to trend to tomorrow, running about 8.5%, we are seeing your per employee per month, that's that PEPM, per employee per month claims, running about 18% higher than it was last year. Now again, that has come down from the 20% when we were here last month. Lag, the time it takes from the date of service for that claim to get to Wellmark, is still running around 30 days. We're not seeing anything out of the ordinary on where your places of services or where claims are coming from. Your facility, you're always going to be your highest cost claims. Your hospital inpatient, outpatients, about 40%. Your professional visits, about 34.2%, and your pharmacy, about 25%. So when we look at the same time period as last year, we're really running around the same. So we're not seeing anything out of the norm for where those places of services are taking place. Now, when I was out here last time, we look at your large claims. So these are any claims that are above your stop loss of $175,000, so your reinsurance. Those are claims that a district are not on the hook for. You pay for reinsurance. At that time, we just had one, but we knew there was some trickling to, beneath that. We always look at those covered above $100,000 and up. And so since I was here last, so the 2 months, we do have 3 members that have exceeded that threshold. Now, every year we run our analytics based on your demographics, based on your claims, based on your population, and we come up with really what we would expect for a group of your, what we call predictive burden, your claims, your demographic, and we had 9.9 members. Now, there's still time left in the year, but again, it's trending on more of the favorable note. So we only have 3 over that stop loss through April. We also want to make sure that your plan is running efficiently, and what we do is we kind of take your claims and run it through a machine. We look at what has been presented to Wellmark for billed charges. That's on the far left. So through April, we'll call it $5 million has been presented. Before those dollars even hit your plan, Wellmark does their job. They take off nearly 44% in provider discounts. We have COB, which is coordination of benefits, or contract limitations, possible duplicate charges, charges that were denied because they weren't covered, just less than 0.1%. And then those stop loss violations, which I just referenced on the page before. So of that $26.5 million, we take off almost $11 million, 10.8, and that leaves $14.9 million then to go to the plan. Those go to your members, deductibles, coinsurance, copays, and that's another 12.6%. Of that 26.5, that leaves 12.3 million that is paid for by the plan. And that's on the bottom number, the plan efficiency, that 46.6%. So for every dollar that's presented, 46.6 is being paid for by the plan or by the district. We also want to look at where those costs are coming from. So we know there are claims, but we also know there are premiums involved too, and we want to look at the total member burden. And so what we do is we take the combined dollars of the plan. So there's fixed costs, the cost that Wellmark charges for administration, taxes. We have the medical and pharmacy claims, of course, and then the staff contributions. So of that $15.6 million through April, we'll go over to the staff. The staff is kicked, they don't pay for the fixed costs, they do through the premiums, but they don't pay directly fixed costs. They have their portion of medical claims, 1.6 million, pharmacy claims, and then their premiums, their contributions, which total 5.6 million, or 36% of the total piece of pie. That leaves the additional 64% to the district. As I always mention, there's not a ton of benchmarking. The gold standard is the Milliman benchmark. And we look at the 21 benchmark for Milliman, 58% employers, 42% on member burden. The district currently is running 64%, 36%. Last full plan year, it ended at a 62-38. So it's showing that with the claims coming in, with the contributions taken into account, the plan is running more favorably towards the employees than the employer. We look at dental. While dental is running well, and it's been funding well, there is an increase of about 5.3% above last plan year. A current trend with Delta Dental South Dakota is about 5.5%, so you're running right around trend, and we'll see that come up in the renewal as well. When we wrap everything up, we look at the contributions, we look at expenses, and then we break that down to net district costs, and that's what this does. We look at year to date, so this would be through April. Then we annualize that. Now, it's not just as simple as taking how many months the plan has had, divide by 12, and get that annualized. There's a few factors that we take into account there. But if we look at year to date, we look at total contributions coming in about $14 million. That's between the district and the staff. We look at those fixed costs I just referenced. So for a total of $14.18 million. Those are the fixed costs, the paid claims, and then the RX rebates. So your plan with Wellmark is what's called a pass-through plan. So any manufacturer rebates that Wellmark receives on pharmacy drugs, typically on your specialty and brand drugs, that goes back to the district. And thus far, you've received $640,000 in credits. You'll see that we're projecting about $1.3 million throughout the plan year. So once we take that into account, we look at total contributions in of just over $14 million. We look at total plan expenses at $14.187. So we're looking at about 100.8% running to budget through April. And if we look over on the right here, the 0.8%, that actually came down from the last time I was here a couple months ago. So we are, again, seeing that favorable trend downwards. When we take those costs, the expenses, the $14.187 million, we take away the contributions that you've received from the staff. That leaves a total net district cost of $10.1 million. We break it out upon population, so per employee per month. about 20.6%. Again, down from last time we were here, but we're still running at a 20% on a per employee per month basis. Okay. So all those numbers, obviously we marketed your plans as we talked last time. We go out and we do not only the analytics, the underwriting, but we need to tell your story. And we do that by going out to the market to see what other providers are going to provide to you. As a reminder, real quick, last plan year, we received a 5.8% increase. We did add a couple of benefit programs to the dental plan, prevention pays, and health oral wellness. And we did reduce the base life and AD&D rates, which are paid for by the district, down as well. We did market your plans, as I mentioned. Wellmark, obviously, is your incumbent. We looked at other carriers, two of the ones that did provide competitive proposals that helped us go back to Wellmark to negotiate your costs, United Healthcare, Health Partners. And then for stop loss, that reinsurance, we went out to the market as well. So when I was here last, we were looking at that 13.2% increase. Based on the data through February, based on the analytics, with Wellmark's renewal came in, it was 13.2%. Since that time, we were able to negotiate with them. Again, your plan has trended more favorably. We were able to reduce that on their claim factors. So Wellmark sees your claims also trending favorably. While projecting 12.9% originally, they've dropped that down to 9.5%, which drops the renewal down to a flat 10%. Now, that's no plan design changes. When I was here last time, I also mentioned that I work with the HR team and we look at opportunities. So we look at the deep dive details of your plan and where is there opportunity that makes sense to the plan and to the participants. We did that, and we're going to show and recommend an alternate plan design. You can see there we go from a 10% down to an 8.6. And I'll show you exactly where that change is coming from. So current versus recommended. So in the blue column here in the middle, this is your current plan design. Obviously, it's not every benefit, those high levels, those that we want to point out, and then the alternate plan design. First thing you'll notice is we're recommending a decrease in the plan deductible. So a single will go from a $2,000 down to a $1,500, a family down from a $3,600 to a $3,000. With that, we are recommending an increase in the out-of-pocket, going from a $4,000 single to a $5,000, a $6,800 to a $10,000. Now, before I get to the bottom of that, I want to also let you know a few of the factors that led into that opportunity. When we look at plan design change, we don't want to make plan design change just to lower numbers. It has to make sense, not only to the plan design, but to your members, as I mentioned. Over the last couple of years, approximately 64% of covered members on your plan have resulted in less than 8% of cost to your plan. It's the old Pareto principle. 80% is driven by 20%. In the actuarial world now, it's more of 90-10. For Rapid City, it's a 64 driving 8. 10% of your covered members over the last few years have resulted in over 72% of plan costs. We want to be stewards and fiduciaries of your plan. We want to look at how it's effective and fair to everyone. So with those two factors, that's what leads to the decrease in deductible. We want people to use the plan. We want them to go in early. And it's not to punish individuals who have high claims, but we want to make it fair. So if we keep a richer plan, it's going to be a higher cost plan to everyone. By increasing that out-of-pocket to still what we would say is about a benchmark average, helps reduce the cost of that plan. Another key factor to remember in this is when I talked about the 64%, the 8%, the 10% of members resulting in 72% of the plan cost, is really what we see out of pocket, not counting premiums. So over the last 2 plan years, 82% of covered members have incurred less than $2,000 in plan cost, co-pays, co-insurance, deductibles. 92% less than $4,000. So again, we're looking at what makes sense for the entire plan, for the entire population. You also see that 2 other changes on this recommended plan are to the pharmacy drugs. For the tiers 1 through 4, tier 1 is typically your generics, and then you go up to brand and formulary and non-formulary. You can see that we're just lowering them and making them easier to understand. But we are changing the specialty drugs. So specialty drugs, just a quick FYI on that, these are drugs that there are no generics. We can't tell someone on a specialty medication, oh, find a cheaper version. They're not there. So we never want to price them out. But currently, those drugs which are extremely high cost, Humira is a good example, about a $10,000 a month drug, members are paying less than they would for a generic. So one thing we are recommending is to change the specialty drugs on the generic preferred specialties to 25% to a max of 200, and non-preferred specialties 50% to 400. Real quick, I gave you some data on the plan costs. Your last 2 plan years, you had roughly 29 or 31 members, it's 2 different plan years, with specialty medications. Those could be duplicates if they have different medication or similar multiple medications, but those roughly 30 members resulted in 58 and 42% of your entire drug spend. So again, to help make that plan more equitable, to be good stewards of the plan, to make sure the costs are not just favoring one side, that's why you see the increase on the specialty drugs. Okay? So if we do that, I mentioned earlier that the increase goes down. So we see an expected claim cost of about 7.9%. That's contractual from Wellmark. We see their stop loss, their reinsurance premium remains at 15%, which is very favorable. Leveraged trend, which means claims we know increase year over year on trend, but if we don't change our stop loss, that's an increased cost to the carrier, is leverage trends usually in the 20 to 25%, so a very favorable 15. We see their administration fee. So when we take all of their expected costs and blend it with their expected claims, we come to the contractual of 8.6. Now currently, the district is funding about 101% of Wellmark's contractual expected. We would continue that percentage with the 8.6. I always like to point out the silo over here because we see numbers like 15% and 2% on administration, on stop loss. The bulk of your costs are going to be claims, almost 90%. 7% of your total cost comes from stop loss and the rest from administration. If we carry that 8.6 over to contributions so you get an idea of what that looks like, I'm just going to focus real quick on the 12-month employees. So on a single employee, a little blurry here, but I'm going to say $852 per month it would increase, so from $99.18 to $107.20. An employee plus one, $39.10, and the family tier, $58.64. So really what you're going to end up getting with this alternate plan design would be a trend increase. So we see a plan that's running well above trend, but trending favorably. We're able to negotiate with Wellmark that favorable renewal. Dental, as I mentioned, you're running about 5% over last year. There have not been increases in that plan, but we have increased the benefits available to them over the last few years. So we are recommending a 5% increase on the dental premiums. And you can see on a per month change, that's going 18 cents, $1.42, and $2.09, single plus one, and family. Your base life and AD&D insurance is not up for renewal at this time, but again, this is a reminder we did lower that cost back in January. So then if we roll everything up, we look at the total plan expenses, the staff costs, and the district costs. We look at medical, dental, and the other district paid benefit, base life and AD&D. So I'll go down here. The current projected annual expense to the district is about $12.7 million on the medical. If we were to do nothing to the plan, the projected increase is just over $14 million. The recommended plan design change under 13.8. It's an 8.6% increase. That 5% on the dental, nothing on the base life. So when we wrap all of those together, if we do nothing to the medical, we're looking at 9.6 projected increase to the district, or with that recommended medical plan design change, 8.3. Any questions? And thank you for your time.
Yes, really quickly, and maybe Kristen, you can speak to this. This was projected a couple months ago during negotiations that it might be at 13 point something. And so you guys have worked really hard to get that number down to the 8.3, and I commend you for that. If you want to speak to it really quick.
I really appreciate Brown & Brown's partnership in this and working with COI in the business and support services area. For those who cannot see, there are a number of people who are not necessarily always going to be compelled by benefits. And so if I can add maybe a little bit more of an informal piece of feedback on what Brown & Brown has presented, it's this. We talk about benefits as a very potent piece of the total rewards program when we talk to employees, the negotiations process. And obviously, a wage is going to be one of the most important pieces of any discussion. But we want people to know what we're doing with their benefits because, A, we want to design a program that will give them the best possible reward at the lowest possible premium and catch them if they ever need it. And so we went into negotiations, and at that time, it was projected to be that 13.2% increase. With the market being what it is, that's not a huge shocker. Our plan has had a year where we have really had to use as employees our health plan. But what we want to do as administration to try and serve employees is to say, is there a wise way to mitigate that cost and take that 13.2 down in any way that is wise and responsible? And so having Brown & Brown take those old months and cycle them out of the plan because those were months that were unhealthy and expensive for our plan, and then having more recent 3 months to be able to show data to our vendors and say those months were a much better reflection of health for our plan and able to secure those better costs, that was a really potent piece that took us down from 13.2 to 10.4, and that was very important. But then looking at those plan design changes to say 10.4 is still a really high amount for our employees, and if we can chip away at that even more in a smart way, what can that look like? And so talking to Brown & Brown and talking to the finance office and saying, if these 3 changes that we can make can lower that down another 8.6, that's really good. Knowing that one of those changes is going to be lowering the deductible is going to universally make the plan more accessible and more helpful to employees. And for us, in looking at those 3 options, and knowing that there's one that is going to be purely positive for absolutely everyone and make healthcare very accessible, that's a really good thing for us. The other 2 things, they're trade-offs, but in really hammering what Brown & Brown has said, that we're seeing very high utilization in our plan that is not being spread out quite evenly. And so we want to make sure that as we are being responsible administrators, that we are making annual adjustments rather than letting our plan get out of touch with the market and not serve employees as well. So for any members of the Rapid City Area School employee base, or hopefully prospective employee base, rcas.org, I want you to know that we are looking out for your interests in this way as well. And if anyone else wants to get nerdy about it, there are people here for that are interested in that type of thing. Thanks.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there any other questions for the gentleman from board members? Okay. Moving on then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Moving on to approval of the consent agenda. I need a motion. Gabe and Deb. All right. Does anybody want anything pulled? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. Moving on to first reading of the Rapid City Area District Invocation Policy. I need a motion. Motion. Gabe?
Second.
And Troy? Discussion.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Deb.
I'd like to make a motion that we revise the policy as written in the handout.
Okay. Can she get a second?
Second.
Troy seconds. All right, discussion on that.
My first, very conflicted with the policy, not conflicted about the invocation, but conflicted about the implementation of the invocation. I think tonight we had a perfect example of what my point is. I think that an invocation should be done by a professional, someone who knows what they're doing. The scripture that was used on tonight to give an example of not having public prayer was taken out of context. It's not at all what Jesus was saying about public prayer. And so that's an example of my fear of opening up invocation to the list of people that are on the policy. I will agree that the last prayer, someone emailed me and I emailed them back, that the last prayer did not support my opinion, the opinion of my church, or the opinion of the God that I serve. And so I want invocations, but I want them done by people who know how to do an invocation. And so I would suggest even having a list of verified people by the board who understand what an invocation is, who understand what it's supposed to do, who understands it's not supposed to offend, who understands it's not supposed to start off with a speech, but will just get up. And I agree, an invocation shouldn't be more than a minute long. I mean, you can have an invocation in 45 seconds. Even to the point that maybe we need to have written, submitted invocations. And so, again, my concern is not whether we should have or not have an invocation. I strongly believe that we should, and I understand all the religious implications and all of that. But if we're going to have one, I think it's important that it's done by somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to agree with Mr. Carr. But I also believe that when you have a professional come up, they're not going to give us a speech. They're going to immediately go into it. And I agree the 3 minutes is way too much time. I think it should be cut down. And I also believe that if they violate, then they're suspended from it for 6 months, a year, whatever the policy is. But I think it's important, but I think there's rules that have to follow through to have it. I wasn't at the last meeting in person, and I came in late, and I was bombarded by a lot of people that said, please look it up, and it went too far. And the gentleman who said, or the lady, I don't remember who tonight, said, you know, if you have him come back, it's pretty shameful. I agree. If somebody like that, they need to, if they're going to be here for a reason, they need to stick to that reason. I don't need to hear your personal stories. Thank you.
Part of the revision does say that the invocation can be given by a clergy member, staff, student, community member, and this is where there is an invocation across the country at schools. This has been something that's approved of by judges. Any person desiring to encourage and wish, and then there's perimeters around what you can say, and then if anyone violates board policy in providing the invocation, they will no longer be eligible to provide invocations at future board meetings. And the content, it talks about the content of the invocation must be free from harassment, discrimination, obscenities, threats, or intimidations, which actually follows quite along with our open forum civility rules there. So I think the revision, if you read it again, if anything, maybe your suggestion of maybe 1 minute we could put down and change that as well. But I think it provides a little bit more inclusion, where to go. If you're of a different religion, you know where to put in your request, and it lists it a lot better, I think. So I'd appreciate both your comments. Any more?
Yeah, I do.
Yep, go ahead.
I think that's, again, my concern is that even though someone may know the rule, by the time they get up and we say that was inappropriate, the damage has already been done. And there was a suggestion, I think the lady that left, but I was quite offended with the assumption that I endorsed, and I'm not speaking for the board, I'm speaking for me, but that I would endorse any prayer or anything that would offend or hurt anybody. And so just because that person, whoever prays, and again, that's what my concern is, that whoever we give that mic to, we have to trust that they are going to do what they're asked to do, and we don't know that until after they're done and say, okay, they did a good job, or that was horrible. So that's why even though we're opening it up, that's not. I do agree that it should be different faith, different people, but I'm more concerned about the specific person that does the invocation. Do they know what these rules are. Have they read the rules? Again, I didn't know Mr. Rasmussen had already prayed before. So I don't know how that was an oversight, but he probably shouldn't have been allowed to pray the other night either. So,
if there's any other suggestions, then this is just the first reading and can be approved of tonight and then added to, if you would like to read it to make sure that this revision is what you're suggesting. And then the second reading would be July 12th, I think. So, any other discussion? Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second for, on the amendment to revise it. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. And then the next 10B, classroom displays and decorations. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Gabe?
Troy. Discussion. Anybody want to go comments on it? I'll just make the comment that it does reflect LEAD's policy that they just passed. The amendments that were talked about tonight that they made, I still am not sure if anybody wants to make any of those kinds of amendments, but it's talking about things that are on display in the classrooms, not necessarily on a person. So obviously there is clothing, you know, that nobody should be coming to school with. Pot leaves, or beer, you know, things that are illegal for someone under 21, and that's an expectation of teachers and staff as well. But it certainly doesn't mean that this policy would not say that you could not wear a cross or that you can't wear a flag shirt, a pride flag shirt. That's not where this is at. It's only on top of displays. Everywhere, to the point of that particular poster, I didn't know about that, but there are other posters that I think would offend other people. Let's say a big red poster that says "Make America Great Again" in white would be offensive to some people. And so that's the point. It's either we have it all or we don't have anything, but we're not talking about your personal being and what you display and who you show who you are. So I guess that's all my explanation would be on that policy. Any other discussion? Okay. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right. Reports of the superintendent is on here, but we certainly do not expect you. You just started work, I think, yesterday, so we do not expect one. We'll give you some time. Oh, you've got one. My goodness. No?
I don't have one.
No.
I started work today.
Oh,
so
today.
That is next time.
Grateful to hear that. Okay. Other. Does any board member have any other? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. It's been brought to my attention here, I guess, a little while ago now, and I think I mentioned something about it to leadership, all in hopes that I think something would have been done about it by now. But what has been brought to my attention is that for 2 years now, it's been approved and nothing done about it, but the hiring of a head girls wrestling coach for Stevens High. Program's been going for 3 years, sanctioned for 2, and approved for head coach for 2 years. I think in this particular sport is probably one of the fastest growing sports in the states here, and South Dakota is no different. So I guess I'm highly recommending that to the board and to the administration that this job description gets posted out soon before we have a Title IX situation on our hands in regards to that. And that possibly could go for Central too, because that'll probably be coming down the road as well.
I would ask that I could come back and report on that. I think my understanding on that specific topic has been hiring for that position was contingent on number of athletes that were involved in the program. I may be wrong, but I would like to at least check into that with the activities directors and report back to the board.
That'd be great. I would probably ask the head coach to be involved in that now, and I think he could give you some other reasons why. It would probably be great to.
Coach King has
get that
reached
done.
out to me. I will contact him as well.
Thank you.
Perfect. I have a couple others, if nobody else. Okay. To a comment earlier, YouTube is streaming, I believe, and so it is being streamed. The books update, we can't give you an update yet until we hear back from the investigation. It is ongoing. Let's see. Oh, really quickly, the invocation policy does make it possible that other beliefs can come, and I just wanted to make a comment to, there have been a couple of different Native American speakers, and one in the language, I'm not sure which one, but I believe Lakota, who has done the invocation. And then we have had the discussion of putting curriculum links that is in that resolution. That has started last October, so they are ready and well aware of that. And then Dr. Hafer, I have a question. So, and it was in a conversation that we were talking about earlier. You know, the teacher shortage and the special ed shortage isn't, it's hard when they're not even graduating from colleges. If you could briefly just tell us what you remember as far as those that are graduating out of, I think it was University of South Dakota? And then like prior, and then what the graduation rate, how many people came out of that this last year?
Actually, I was at University of South Dakota watching my daughter graduate, and I took a picture of 400 to 500 students on the floor, and I went through the program and counted out 21 students who graduated with special education. So it is a crisis across, and at Black Hills State University, if I'm recalling right, I do believe there was 5 or 8 that graduated with special education. So we have struggles all over the place. I think right now, for us, we're doing fairly well, hiring in the teacher area. We have closed down some of our programs. We are moving some of our students around to accommodate that. But our biggest problem is hiring paraprofessionals. And so when we can't hire paraprofessionals, and I do believe we're at 42 openings currently, when we can't hire those positions, like what Ms. Bias was saying, it stresses on them, and the stress for them causes them to quit the position because it's too much. It's overwhelming. They do need that support. And we did a great job this year. Kristen really did a wonderful job of helping me with negotiations, and I know you were there as well. And so we worked on the differentiated pay. It just is not competitive with what the other jobs that we have out in the area are right now. And it's just kind of a cycle. And so Mr. Christensen and I meet at least once a week to try to decide what are we going to do, how are we going to handle this, and what's the next steps.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. I also spoke with Northern State University as well, too, and 17 years ago there was 300 graduates with teaching degrees, 12 more of those in the special needs places. This year there was a total of 9 teachers that graduated. This is not a board problem. This is a problem across the nation. And we've got to sit up here, and the administration's got to sit up here and listen to this, and whatever that we're at fault for not hiring teachers. It's kind of hard to find them, to be honest. That's my opinion on it.
It is true. I just needed to speak on that just because it isn't just, it is all over the country. It's a problem. So, and we are well aware of it. All right.
Kate,
yes,
can I just
go ahead.
add?
Yeah.
I think that with a paraprofessional, we have to consider that if they're looking for jobs, they're probably looking for jobs right now, and paraprofessional positions don't start until August. I know that historically as an administrator, when I've had to post paraprofessional positions, lots of people applied in July and August as I got closer. I'm not saying that we will necessarily see that huge change of applications, but it's June, and to say we're going to hire you, but you have to wait until August to start or get paid, I do think we have to make that consideration. Also, I know that we have had some representation at the Wilson Fair this weekend. We are actively going out and trying to showcase all of our open positions in community events this year. This summer, we're asking hiring managers to participate in that. I heard really great things about what was going on at Wilson. I know that they had a big planter of dirt, and kids could scoop up dirt into cups and plant a seed, and the theme was Grow With Us. So I know that we're trying to make, I think Kristen could talk to that as well, we are trying to get out more, but it takes everybody to encourage people to apply and to let people know that it's okay to apply now and start in August. We can definitely do that and have those conversations, and of course we do have multiple seasonal jobs available that can tide people over until then. But it is a concern that I always had as a hiring manager, is that I would post a position and I would have applicants, but they'd be like, but I can't start until August? Well, okay, I can't take that job because I need a job now. So we do have to consider that. Kristen will have something else.
Oh, go ahead.
So we are trying to put out a recruiting push. One of the things that for so many people out there who love public education and all the people who make it happen, recruiting is a team sport. I know when you think HR, you don't think sports, but it is a team sport. And so for anyone out there who is interested in helping to stave off the staffing crisis, that team lift by sharing our postings out, because good people are the best way to find good people. And I think getting 6% from the state this year was a very big help, as we all saw at negotiations. It's the start. And anything that we can do to help really show that public education and the wonderful people who facilitate it is a priority is wonderful, and that thank you for the people who are staying. Thank you for the people who have had to go, but we understand, but for the people who are here and sharing their talents and have really helped to serve students these last few years particularly, thank you so much. And our special educators, though many of us don't do what you do, I hope you know that we talk about you a lot and we appreciate you a bunch. That last part was very informal, but thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Any others? Okay.
I'm just wondering, Shane, is there any way that we can kind of divide out that list is so long and cumbersome, especially for people who aren't familiar with applying for a position in the district. Is there a way to list out, these are the clerical jobs, these are the paraprofessional jobs, these are the teaching jobs?
That's a me thing. So the fast track system thinks by position, and so we've had some roles where we've said all the clerical positions are one posting, but since each one of them is actually a unique role supporting a different building that has different responsibilities, they do have to be accordioned out. But we are currently at the point of the year where we are transitioning out of the 21-22 plan year, and so we're taking all of those postings down, because for the last month or so, you may have seen the same position posted twice, because we were going, hey, if we can get somebody to start now and we can start training them, we're going to do that, but we also may have the position posted for next year. So we're taking down the 21-22 postings. We are either adding a new or moving candidates over to the 22-23, and we're condensing where we can, but that list will get a little bit shorter.
I know it takes us to fast track, but I'm kind of talking about on that, when we click on that briefcase for careers, is there a possibility of having a different logo or something that takes us to a list of positions before you click on the career, the briefcase for careers, so you know what you're looking for when you move over there? because I just think people are overwhelmed with the number of positions we have listed.
I like that too.
I'm going to come over to your office tomorrow, take some notes.
All right, we are going into executive session. I do not have it listed which South Dakota codified law. 1-25-2.1. I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
All right, Jim and Troy, and we will not have any other action items afterwards. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Thank you so much for everybody coming tonight.
Dr. Hafer. You're missing the